Hi, this is Tom Walsh. Thanks for stopping by to watch this video. In today's macro, I'm going to show you a few different things. First, I'm going to show you how to display a message on screen. I'm going to show you how to get some user input and then do something or work with that user input. And then we'll briefly touch on a for next loop. So let's get to our macro. First thing we're going to do on our macro is go over to the Developer tab, and then we'll open up the editor. Once I'm in the editor, I'm going to go up to Insert, and I'm going to insert a new module. This is where we're going to create our new macro. Let me reposition that just a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is we're going to create a new subroutine to display a dialog box on the screen. So I'm going to call that Hello World. So the function to do that is message box, MSG-BOX, and what I'm going to do is give that a prompt or a string, and I'm just going to put in Hello World with an exclamation point, and just leave it at that. And now when I go up and run, what's going to happen is it's going to display a dialog box on the screen with that text in the dialog box. So you can see it says Hello World. And I click OK, and the macro is done. Not very exciting, but we'll do another one that and kind of build on that a little bit. The next one we're going to do is we're going to create another subroutine. We'll call this one Hello World 2. This one we're actually going to do, and we're going to get some user input and use that user input in our dialog box. So this time I'm going to declare a variable. We'll call it var name, and we'll display that or declare that as a string. And now what I'm going to use is I'm going to use another function that is called input box. This is a function that will allow me to get input from a user, and I'll be able to do something with that. So I'll put in an input box, and I'll say enter your name, and I'll give a title of that box to say name. And this is the information I'm going to use to display in my dialog box using the message box. So now I've got my variable, and it'll get assigned a value. And now I'm going to use my message box just like I did above, and I'll type my same Hello World. This time though, I'm going to concatenate using an ampersand, so that just means add on the variable name to the end of that string of text that I have that says Hello World. So we'll say Hello World from, I'll use our ampersand and supply it with our variable name. Okay, so now when we run that, the first thing we get is a message box or an input box asking us to enter our name. So I go ahead and I type in Tom, I hit OK, and now we get Hello World from Tom. Okay, not very useful, but a little bit more useful. Now we'll add a little complexity to our macro. We're going to prompt the user for a number of different values. We're going to prompt them for the number of rows, a start value, a value to add to another value, and we're going to also prompt for their name. Use all that information and assign it to cells in a spreadsheet and display a dialog box at the end to know that we're finished. Okay, so let's get started. So this macro we're actually we'll add on the end of our module. We'll call it get more user input. Again, we're going to declare all of our variables and use those variables somewhere in the macro. So the first thing we're going to do is we will ask for the declare the variable var name. We'll declare the number of rows. That one's a little bit different. We'll use that as an integer. Everything we've used so far has been a string. We'll set a start value, or we'll dim a variable as a start value, also an integer. We'll declare a variable that has what the step value, or the number we're going to add to our previous total. We'll also set a variable for the current cell value. That's kind of our counter, our incremental value we're using. And we'll also set a counter value. So this is going to be used in our for next loop that I'm going to show you how to do. So I will declare a var counter, again, as an integer. Now we're going to go through and we're going to set up some input boxes and get some values to put in those variables we just declared. So I will take the var name and I will use an input box to get the name. You can see that in the yellow there, it kind of prompts you of where you're at in the variables that you're using to input into your function. So here I'm declaring the title, so I'm saying get info. I won't do that for all of them, just to save some time. So now I'm going to get input the number of rows. The reason we declare the variables up above, you can see there I have the var num rows and it's not capitalized, but as soon as I finish this sentence and hit a carriage return, it will capitalize the actual variable name just like I have up above. And that's a good way to check and make sure you have not misspelled variable names or have the correct variable name. So now I'm getting my start value, and again, I'm just looking for an integer value. And next I'm going to get the value that I want to add to all of my other values. So basically I'm going to start out at a value, so let's say 100, and I will add 50 to it, and so I get 150, 200, 250, that type of thing. So these are the variables I'm going to get, and I'm going to assign all of those into a particular cell for the number of cells that I've said to, or the number of rows that I've said to get in the value above. Once we're all done, it will all make sense. Okay, so now I have the number to add. So now I'm going to basically start out and say that my current value of the cell is my starting value. Okay, now I'm going to start my for next loop. So a for next loop will go for a set number of times. So here I'm going to start out at, I'm going to use my counter and go to 1 and go to the number of rows that I have picked for this particular macro that I got from the user input. Okay, so between that I'm going to do a couple of commands. I'm going to take the active cell, where the cursor happens to be in my current active sheet, and I'm going to set that to the current value. So that's actually going to be my start value. Now I'm going to take my current value and I'm going to add my incremental value, or my step value, to it. And this is a pretty common programming trick. You take the current value and you set it to the current value plus maybe 1 or whatever incremental value you're doing. So in this one I'm going to do the step value. And then I'm going to move down one cell. So I'm going to take the active cell and I'm going to select down 1 row and over 0 columns. So that positions my cursor into the next cell. And then at that point the loop ends and it goes back up to the top, and it increments the counter by 1. And it will do that until the counter has hit the variable that I've input. And in the macro that I'm going to run here in just a second, we'll use about 40 cells, 40 rows. And I always like at the end of a macro to display something just to let myself know that the macro has actually ended. So here I'll just say, use the variable var name, and I'll just put a little message that says I'm done. Okay, and now it's done. And let's run it and let's see what actually happens. Hopefully we get through this. So I'm going to switch back to Excel, and from within there I'm actually going to click on the macros from my developer tab. I'll click on the macros icon and it'll give me a list of active macros. And I'm going to go down to the get more user input and I'll select it and say run. And now I get prompted for a name. So I put in my name and I hit OK. I get prompted for a number of rows. Let's try 40. And it will now prompt me for a starting value. Let's start out at 100. And let's add 75. And once I click OK, it actually goes pretty quick. And it says, Tom, I'm done. I hit OK, just so we can now look at a little bit about what we have on our spreadsheet. You can see that it started out in A1, went from 100 and added 75 all the way down through 40 cells and came up with a grand total of 3,025. So hopefully in this macro you've got the idea of how to get some user input, do something with that user input, and also showed you a little bit about how to use a for next loop. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like to see more of this type of video, please go to www.excelformac2011.com. Thanks again for watching.